Hi, welcome everybody to our next session of Attitude is Everything, where I'm speaking to business owners that have refused to give up, during this period of lockdown and the pandemic, and they're actually not only surviving, but they're actually thriving as well. So in this session, we're speaking to Paul Selman of PRS Plumbing Solutions and Beehive Property. Hi, Paul.
Hiya, how you doing, Dean? You all right?
I'm good, mate. Thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I had a good week so far. So yeah, so it's all going well.
Good. So, Paul, just for the sake of everybody watching, can you just give a quick intro about yourself and about the businesses that you have?
Yeah, sure, not a problem. Yeah, but like Dean said, my name's Paul Selman. Got two predominant businesses that I'm involved with. One is PRS Plumbing Solutions, and that's based in Kent, and we cover mainly central heating and plumbing maintenance, repairs, that type of work. And the other one is Beehive Property, which is based a little bit more further afield in the Greater Manchester area. And as the name suggests, that's heavily involved in the property industry and development in general.
Cool. So Go on, sorry, Paul, go on.
No, I was going to say the plumbing industry one has been going for about 10 years now. That was when I first became self-employed. And I've just been building that over the last sort of 10 years. And Beehive's been running for about 2 years now. So.
Cool. So it'd be good to sort of talk maybe more on the side of the PRS plumbing, but also when you're answering some of these questions, it'd be good to find out what your view was on how they've differed or what different strategies you brought in place for either business and things like that, just to deal with the times, in the last 4 months or so. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely fine. Yeah, not a problem at all.
Cool. All right. So, a question I'm asking everyone, Paul, when did you first sort of realise that, the shit was going to hit the fan, right? That we were in such a big deal at the moment, with this pandemic coming. When did you realise that you were going to have to make changes within both businesses?
Yeah, well, there was a quite sharp alteration I found. I've been listening to the news like most people, and also had my other half in my ear saying about schools were maybe going to shut, and that was the first sort of sign that I saw that something was going to change. I hadn't quite taken it as seriously as I thought. Looking back now in hindsight, I probably should have. When other countries started shutting schools, that should have been a good indicator. It certainly will be for future ones that we may and may not have. I thought that it was just other countries dealing with this crisis in a particular way, and that the British would probably not shut schools. We wouldn't shut businesses. We wouldn't shut. As it turns out, yes, we did. We did all of the above. So, but it was quite a sudden shock when they said, right, businesses are shutting. Because, in my working life, I've never had anything as fundamental as a shift as that at all. So yeah, it was at the beginning of March, end of March, where we just it crept in, and everybody was just saying, well, everything's got to shut down. At first, I thought, like with most people, where you see the reports on the news now saying they were going to start helping businesses, the furlough scheme was coming in. There was going to be grants available. I started actually getting prepared to actually shut down myself. I think it was only 2 days after all these grants that were announced sort of came into fruition, just how hard they were going to be to actually obtain, that I thought, well, I'm going to have to do something different here, and maybe move the businesses in a different direction, because even though the help was meant to be a blanket, there was obviously a few people that slipped through the cracks there, and I would have been one of them that would have done. Yeah,
so and it's quite interesting that you mentioned the British way of, we'll just keep that stiff upper lip and carry on, right? Even though there's other countries around us. So, I know from, you and I work together and stuff, so I know that at the time you were very much of the sort of reasoning of, it'll just be fine, I'll carry on working as normal. And then all of a sudden there was like that big wallop, wasn't there, when all of a sudden we started to realise the enormity of what was happening, right? And And like you said, there was a point where you thought, actually, maybe I've got to stop trading or doing things like that. So, what made you turn around? You mentioned about the grants, that maybe some businesses have slipped through the net for various reasons, of whether you qualified for grants, bounce back loans, all of those kind of things that were available. So what made you where was your head at what made you to turn around and say, you know what, I'm not just stopping, I'm not closing down the business, I'm not putting it into hibernation, I'm just going to actually just pick myself back up, and I'm going to push it forward no matter what the world throws at this?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, the way I've worked out that I work over the last 10 years is I have to be constantly busy. a lot of the time, just to make sure that I perform at my best. So I knew in the back of my head that if we did go into hibernation, the chances are we wouldn't come out of hibernation, because I would lose that momentum in business, and that's across both businesses. And once that momentum was lost, not only then would my cash flow suffer, profits would be down, so I may not even have the cash flow and the profits to be able to reopen again at the end of it. That was a big driver in how I was going to handle the lockdown, as it were. If I did lock down and shut the business, chances are it wouldn't be open now. It was my thinking on the matter.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, that's been knowing the benefit to look forward that far, you know, and unfortunately a lot of businesses haven't done that, and a lot of businesses have just thought, you know what, we'll just bed in, ride it out, but we don't know how long this is going on for, right? And your conscious decision to just keep pushing through and make sure that no matter what, your business is going to come out the other side even better than before. And we'll come into that part of how you've grown and what sort of decisions you've taken during this time to ensure that that's the case. So, I mean, you know, on the plumbing side, who's your main sort of clientele on this? Where's your, you know, who do you usually work with? What's your customer base?
Yeah, surely. Well, it's 98% of the time it's just domestic clients. So your regular homeowners, landlords, tenants, that type of client. And we are never typically more than a couple of weeks booked up ahead. It's just the nature of the plumbing business. A lot of it is done on a reactive basis as opposed to a proactive basis. So that was coming back to my previous point on momentum. I knew that in order to get the next 2 weeks work at all times, I'm always having to work 2 weeks behind on the quoting. So that's why if I didn't have that lead coming up, then like I said, that was when the bookings were going to start failing. So, but yeah, so mainly domestic clients. We do have the odd contract, which is a little bit more commercial, but they're smaller factories. And obviously they were closing at the time. But once again, that's reactive maintenance as well in the main. So yeah, that's our main clientele.
Okay. And what about the property business?
Property business is it's got two strands to it really. We do developments of typical terrace houses into sort of HMO buildings, and we do that mainly for overseas clients from Hong Kong, China. So they invest into our business and developments. We source investments for them, and then we actually carry out the work all the way through to the letting stage at the end as well. So that was hit on the basis that our investors were no longer coming into the UK.
Yeah.
They were all booked up until June, and they normally come across maybe 70 at a time every 6 weeks. That has all been now pushed back due to COVID, and we're hoping to get the next set of investors in early October time. And instead of every 6 weeks now, they've backlogged them, so they're coming over every 4 days all the way through to the middle of December. So it's going to be quite a busy time, which is involving a little bit of planning in this quarter for the next quarter anyway. So it's one of the things that Ben and I are going to have to deal with up in the Manchester area as best we can when it comes to that, really.
Cool. So looking back at the plumbing side of it, so what did you bring in? What changes did you make to your business? Because obviously, look, there was a lot of panic. There was people going through all the different stages. Some people were bitter. Some people were panicking. Some people were dismissing it. But what did you bring in within the processes and within the plumbing business to be able to show that your clients that you were taking this seriously and that you could continue to work? Because I mean, at the end of the day, you've mentioned that a lot of your clients are residential, right? So,
yeah, sure.
You're going into people's homes. So what sort of changes did you have to make?
Well, we did see a lot of, we saw the whole spectrum of the reaction to it as well. So we saw all the way from the people who were scared stiff about having anybody come anywhere near them to people who were completely oblivious to it and did not care in the slightest. So we had to work out exactly where we were on that spectrum. And we erred on the side of caution and went with assume everybody is petrified at the start. So within the first week, I still ran the business in the way that we normally would. So say this was for a boiler installation, a call would come in saying I need a new boiler. We would then do an on-site survey and then book in to do the job as per normal. We started doing that, and we started noticing very early on that the people were then getting a little bit nervous about us turning up to do the on-site survey. Some were allowing it, some weren't. That was a good indicator straight away. But also when we did go around to do the on-site surveys, we started with the PPE. Wearing gloves and masks as just a form of actually turning up and doing the survey and protecting ourselves and our customers in that way. And then when we did the job, we made sure that they were isolated in one room, we were isolated in another, and we were wearing full PPE throughout. The way I pivoted the business quote and survey wise, though, was I started moving towards WhatsApp, instant messenger with Facebook, or even just a video call as well. Because with most boiler jobs, which is the mainstay of our work, we can get a lot of the information without being on site. Now, from a business point of view, it always helps to be there to actually build up a little bit of rapport with a customer, and it helps that sort of smooth that process out. But as a good second measure, if we could do it over the phone, then that solved that social distancing aspect of the survey process. We've now actually adopted that as a mainstay in our business, because we realise just how much of a time saver and a cost saver, therefore, that was. So we now offer as a part of the service is, do you want us to do an on-site survey? Are you happy for us to provide a quote over the phone? And we've started just adapting our sales process to match that. We do obviously offer the chance on more complicated jobs for us to go out and view it anyway. But we have now moved away, and we'll probably continue to run the business in that way just because of the cost savings involved.
Yeah, and so how's that been welcomed with how's that been embraced by the clients? Is it a bit of an obstacle to overcome, or do you think at the moment people are embracing it because of the situation and whatever the new normal is going to be? Will people just continue with that, or do you think people will go back to wanting to meet you face to face?
Yeah, well, everybody's different, as we all know. But I mean, I've found that most people are happy to embrace that way anyway. It was probably myself who was, prior to COVID, was a little bit stuck in the past and wanting to do everything in person. I've never known any different, really, from when I've actually started the business.
Yeah.
A lot of people are a lot happier now getting prices instantly, getting finance packages that we offer instantly. So they know exactly what we're dealing with, and they don't have to wait for us to book an appointment and come round. Some people, more traditional, tends to be more the older generation, definitely want to see the person who's going to be working in their home and fitting that boiler. But it seems to be a way that the industry's going, is that everything's being done online or over the phone.
Yeah,
I don't think I'd go as far as just doing everything online. I think a conversation still helps.
Yeah.
There are firms out there that you can go through the whole process without even speaking to somebody, just have your boiler fitted the next day. Suits some people. A lot of people, especially with that amount of money being spent, would probably prefer and feel a little bit more at ease if they had somebody to speak to about it first.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it is one of those things, right? Like I say that technology's been pulled forward, a number of years. It's been forced upon us, right? So in this time, so whatever that new normal is going to be, we don't truly know. But I think this is a time where habits are formed. I think people will become used to just more and more. And you're right, of getting that instant quote, people coming around and fitting the boiler and they've not even met you yet. They might have spoken to you or had a Zoom call or FaceTime or whatever. But, the world we live in right now is everybody wants everything instantly, right? So if you can give them a quote there and then and as quick as possible, then that's a massive benefit for your customers, I'm assuming.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Well, it's at least an icebreaker anyway. So I found now if I deliver the quote over the phone and they've got a price in mind at least, and when we do an on-site survey, if it's required, then price is then no longer a barrier during that part of the sales process, whereas it was probably a little bit in my previous sales pitch to customers.
Okay. And so what else have you changed in your business? What have you done differently with your marketing?
Well, marketing has upped because we found that during the lockdown itself, we had pretty much a free reign of the market. Once I made that conscious decision that we were staying open, and if people, all the while people were happy to have us working in the homes, we would be there. As people started to come back, we've found that prices have been dropped and slashed across the industry by firms that maybe didn't adapt as well in the earlier stages of the breakout. That has forced us to either get involved with a race to the bottom of the barrel, or to actually hold our price line and then sell on quality. And that's the line that we've decided to go down. We've gone back to basics a little bit with some of the marketing. We've started doing leaflet drops. I haven't done a leaflet drop in around about 10 years previous to COVID. So that's a nice one to get back involved with. We've started adopting more SEO route as well, just to try and bring us up the list. If anything, we've expanded our marketing spend by about 3 to 4 times now, which is fine as long as it's monitored. if you're measuring what strategies are working, then just throw more and more money at them. But yeah, apart from that, there's the checker trade angle, making sure our reviews are a lot tighter. We had to let that slip.
Yeah.
We soon realised that with the algorithms and the way that checker trade works, that we dropped down the list of contractors. I think even on my street that I live, I was number 16 on the list, which isn't ideal. So you can see my vans, but you can't see me on checker trade. So yeah, we've just gone back to basics on a lot of measures, marketing wise, and tried to get them all firing as best as they can again.
Yeah, and I think that's key, right? So I speak to a lot of business owners, and a lot of people are looking for this newfound way of marketing, doing and yet we're not doing the basics correct, right? So would you say you've used this time as well to sort of what we're in 4 months now, right? You've been busy throughout, and we're going to come to that how much busier you've become as well. But have you used this time to really look at what perhaps you should have been looking at maybe over the last few years? I know you've revamped your website, you've got a new website, things like that, right? Like you said, you looked at your marketing again, you've looked at your checker trade. Is it something that you've just said, you know what, I'm going to take this time and really focus on turning it into the best business it can be while I've got the time as well?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's been a great time for reflection. It's very easy to get stuck in that wheel of just working week in, week and week and week, and then you look back 3-4 years and you realise that the goals and the plans that you had haven't come to fruition, and the business hasn't grown exactly how I wished it would do. Thankfully, we're back on that trajectory now where I want it to go. But it was that disruption in the last sort of 4 months that has actually helped me to step back, because everybody's had to step back and stop. So I found it to be, even though obviously it's a situation that we would have been better without, it has helped me. There's always a silver lining to a cloud, and just being able to reflect and actually take a more of a bird's eye view of the business has actually helped me to realise where it needs to go and what I need to do to make sure that I'm making it as growable as possible, really.
And so, where's your mindset been throughout all this, Paul? Where have you been through a bit of a roller coaster of emotions? Are you naturally a positive person? Have you been doom and gloom at times? Where have you been with this?
Yeah, I'd be lying if I'd say that. Yeah, I'm constantly positive and it's all brilliant. Yeah, I'm one of these go-getters, because I'm not. I'm a grumpy old man sometimes. So yeah, mindset's always a struggle, I think, with most people. Some people admit it, some people don't. There's been times where I just think it'd be easy to shut the doors, and there's been other times where I think, no, this is really good, this is all going well, and just keep going for it. It's a case of having to give yourself a little bit of time out to reflect. I think sometimes you can get stuck in the in the wheel of doing sort of 70-80 hours a week like I have previously over the last 10 years, and then you don't have time to think about the bigger things or where the business is actually going. You just get stuck in having a job. You basically don't own a business, you own a job, and it's the worst job in the world if you get stuck with it. So yeah, so that's that really. Mindset is important, and I've tried to keep as positive as I can, up the fitness a bit while I've been away as well, because that always helps. Yeah. So yeah.
What else have you been doing to keep that mindset going? To keep yourself in that positive mood, or to grab hold of yourself when you're not feeling positive?
Yeah, sure. Well, Audible always helps. I listen to a lot of books these days, and they're all around positive mindset and business building. So that always helps. I find I can definitely tell the differences in the weeks where I haven't listened to any books, and when I have, I'm a lot more productive. Obviously, coaching that's always helped. If you check in with a coach every 2 weeks to hold you accountable and give you the kick in the right direction, then it's funny how the countdown starts at the start of the week. If you've got a meeting on Thursday and then you haven't done anything for about 3 or 4 days previous, and then you go, right, no, Thursday's coming. So all of a sudden there's a hive of activity. But at least it gets done.
At least it gets done. It's pushing you forward, right? Yeah.
Well, that's it. It is. There wasn't the accountability there. That's one thing I have learned about myself a lot over the last few years, is that without accountability, I'm my own worst enemy, and I will let myself slip. I won't go downhill. I'll still run a business, but I certainly won't run a business at the level that I want it to be running at. And that's just because you're the owner of your own destination, aren't you? Really, when you're a business owner. So you've got nobody to answer to. So it's good to align yourself with a mentor and a coach, just to sort of keep you pointing in the right direction and give you a kick when you need one, really.
Well, it's very easy to come up with excuses as to why we don't do things, right? If there's something on our list, I'm sure we can all relate to that, right? Where if you've got a whole list of things to do, if there's something on there you really don't want to do, we're brilliant at making excuses as to why we shouldn't do them. So taking that into account, what's been your biggest challenge during this time, during these last 4 months?
Well, biggest challenge was actually trying to cope with doing all the business building aspects and actually doing the technician side of stuff as well. So the actual work,
right,
as it were, the gas fitting and the plumbing. That's always been a struggle of mine. I'll get to the point where I'll build it up and I'll do a lot of marketing, get overrun with work. But then because I'm that busy, I won't have any time to carry on with that marketing.
Yeah.
And before I know it, I'll get to the end of the busy period and I won't have any work going forward. And then that cycle has pretty much repeated itself every 3 weeks for the last 6-7 years. So being able to now hire, I mean, that's one thing that I've done gladly throughout this pandemic, is I've hired another engineer that's now taken me off the tools pretty much completely. I'm maybe on there 4 or 5 hours a week now. And that difference of having then every day in the office working on the business instead of being a technician at the coalface of it has made a massive difference, because I can now think clearly. I'm not afraid. I worked out as quite a mindset shift from being afraid of taking on too much work, because I knew it would be me having to do it all.
Yeah.
Now I'm booking out other people's diaries. I'm not as afraid, because I know I've got some great technicians working for the firm. They're more than capable of handling all the work. And if we do get overrun, I'll hire someone else. So just knowing it's just not all on me has made a massive shift.
Yeah, and that's really important to point out, right? So you've expanded during this time, right? So you've been through, like you said, you explained your emotions at the start. You explained where you were and the thoughts that you had. Only natural. We've all been through it. I've ran some workshops at the start of this and explained the natural cycle that we go through in times like this, for our mindset and our businesses and things. You've been through those, but you've come through, you've driven it forward, and you've expanded in this time, right?
Yeah, turnover's up about 25%. Like I said, got another engineer, another van.
Yeah.
Marketing's gone up. Marketing spend has gone up by about 200%. If you actually look at the figures.
Yeah.
So we're not receding, and we're not retracting. We're going all out now and trying to attract as much business as we can.
So what have you learned about you during this time? Have you learned anything about yourself?
Myself and the business in certain ways. I've kind of learned that plumbing's, thankfully, a business that I've picked quite wisely 10 years ago, because it seems to be recession proof. Everybody's got water, and everybody needs heating and hot water. Exactly. As soon as I got that key worker status, I was very proud. So I am important, apparently. So that was great. The property side of things, like I said as well, another great business to be in. People need to live everywhere, and the people are always going to be investing into bricks and mortar as a hedge against other investments in the market. So once again, the old saying that there's nothing safer than safe as houses it comes to fruition again. So and I've learned that about myself personally, that I can adapt if I give myself enough room to think. It's quite easy to fall into a victim's mindset sometimes when bad things are happening around you. But if you do give yourself that sort of time away from it, you can react, and as long as you're speaking it through with other people as well.
Yeah.
And it gives you the odd idea that sends you in the right direction. And once again, we're here. If anything, this pandemic has given me more confidence in business ability, because I've been through something like this, and all right, it's not over yet. We don't know how the economy is going to go for the next 2-3 years, but I think we've come through at least the shock of it to start with. And to be here in a position where I've actually expanded the business and it hasn't retracted, and we're not out of business, far from it, has given me a lot more confidence in my ability to run a firm than I probably did have and didn't need to have previously.
I think that's a really valid point, and and really important for people to take on board. Actually, for the companies that have pushed forward and really taken grip of this. Like I said, IT and tech and that has been accelerated by a number of years. But I also think for business owners, the challenges we've faced, and if we've overcome them and driven our business forward and things like that, the new skills and new the new strategies, the new way of planning, the way we've got to take control of our businesses. I think people have learned a lot quicker than perhaps they would have done, because it's been forced upon them to still be here, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely.
So what have you done? So, you know, you've talked about the changes that you've brought in, some of them, not all of them, but, you know, do you see that, you know, PRS Plumbing and your property business Beehive are a more future-proof now? Because, you know, everything is in business and industry is cyclical, right? It's going to go around and come around. It might not be a pandemic, but it will be something. So, you know, do you feel like you've got two more future-proof businesses?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, it's definitely taught me that we need to be keeping our businesses lean, and not letting the expenses build up, just so that we can react a little bit quicker when the next thing happens. Like I said, it's not a case of if, it's a case of when. There's always a crisis in Britain. We love a good crisis, and and there will always be something that will cause this next recession as well. So as long as you know it's coming, then you can always plan for the worst and hope for the best, really, isn't it? So yeah, I don't think there's going to be any issues that I can foresee now within the plumbing arena or the property arena.
Well, you can adapt to them anyway, right? You know you've got it. You know you've got it in your locker that you can dig deep and, you know, adapt. And like you said earlier, you can pivot. This new word that everybody's using, right?
That's it. Yeah, pivoting. Yeah.
You know you can do that, and you can adapt to whatever the world throws at. So, what's the next end till the end of the year? The next 5-6 months hold for PRS Plumbing and Beehive?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, we've got another 10 weeks left on the current plan. You know, we do a 90-day plan just to make sure that we are aiming in the right directions. It falls in quite nicely in line with the book I read there called the 12-week year, and that's a really good framework there for building, because you tend to find that if you break it down to just 90-day chunks, that you actually have a little bit more enthusiasm to get it done. Whereas if it's a whole year you've got to do something, then you don't tend to find that motivation until sort of November time and wonder why it didn't get done at all. So we want to expand more. I'm looking at the moment, monitoring the metrics to actually see whether or not we're going to be able to take on another engineer in about 6 weeks' time. All being well on the KPIs on that one, then we should have another engineer, and that would be great, especially with the run up to the winter coming.
Yeah,
it's always a busy time in the winter. I find like a lot of proactive stuff is done in the summertime, whereas a lot of reactive stuff is done over the winter period, and we need to have the staff to accommodate that. We're up in the marketing in the London area now, especially for the plumbing and heating, as we try and expand into a much larger market, because the plan is to have at least 10 engineers on the road by the end of next year, which will be great. So that would be a hell of a jump, and that's where we're going. We've been working on a home care product which has now been launched. So we want that to expand. So that's covering 3 different prongs, just from boiler servicing all the way up to a full plumbing package. And we're currently going through the stages of working on a joint venture with another company to bring that forward to market a little bit more vigorously. We're also looking to increase the boiler install count. Last year, I think we're on about 50, so maybe 1 a week, which wasn't too bad, with it being largely just me and the subcontractor fitting. We're already hit 48 this year, with the rest of the year to go. So hopefully that's going to double by the end of the year. And then we want to turn that into maybe 250 to 500 boilers fitted by PRS in the preceding year in 2021. So that's the trajectory I'm aiming at. So it's got to sound high, haven't we?
Busy times, mate. Busy times. Look, and that's coming from a self-confessed, non-positive person all the time, right?
Yeah.
So, you know,
sometimes I am.
Yeah, of course you are. Look, really appreciate your time, mate. And the reason I brought that up right at the end there is because it's really nice and honest and genuine for someone to sit there and say, you know, I'm not always positive. I'm not this and that. I am human. You know, sometimes I have to just bloody dig deep, right? And just get and turn it around and just pick myself up and bring myself up as well. And that's what we all do. I can certainly relate to that. So, mate, really appreciate your time, and thank you for talking to us today.
No problem, Dean. Cheers.
Cheers, Paul.
Mate.